RAQ is now trying to get back into the business, meets up with the Asian guy, and kind of makes her pitch for why she should be allowed to take over what Unique was starting to build. As the guy points out, RAQ doesn't really have a team. She doesn't have anything set up, but she, tells him that she's capable of getting things up and running in, 2-month time frame. It's going to be interesting to see how things shake out from there, because that means she's not going to be able to take her time and slowly build. She's going to have to hit the ground running. And with that, I think it's just going to bring more attention. And again, doing this at this time where Ronnie is out here running about, and then at the same time, she also has the feds and whatnot milling about as well. I don't think things are looking up for our girl, man. Both her and the Asian guy, they want scale with this new operation. So where Unique was looking to start off with just one restaurant, RAQ is looking to get into multiple, right? Like using multiple Chinese restaurants as a front for distribution of drugs. And it goes back to this thing of not learning from your mistakes. This was what got her into all of those problems last season, right? This thing of rushing into things without getting a proper lay of the land. She goes to the Golden whatever restaurant and speaks with the guy and the lady behind the counter, who are the, I think like the cousin of the Asian guy's wife, who's like the supplier. And they're a little bit uncomfortable. They weren't really too excited about working with Unique. And now with him missing, and so with that, they're very uncomfortable about getting into business with RAQ, But RAQ explains business is business, terms have been met, and the game is still afoot. And as part of that, not just that she wants this one shop, but they need multiple shops. And the guy and lady behind the counter, they actually point her in the direction of an older man who's sitting at one of the tables eating what looks like fried rice or whatever. And Marvin being Marvin, is all into the man's rice or whatever. It turns out to be a kind of like one of these Marvin moments where they sit down to talk to the older man, who turns out owns like 20 restaurants or something like that. And in speaking to him, Marvin has like a plate of food, and we see him there trying to like impress the guy by using chopsticks, and he's just like completely lost. It's like, it's a funny little touch that they have, a little quirk of the character, his thing with food, and then like these little comedic moments that he has. And you have it where it's like, you look at him fumbling about with these chopsticks, and and like RAQ is just, but I guess it speaks to like the backstory of it, that RAQ is probably used to Marvin being Marvin, where it's like she's sitting there talking serious business with this guy, and it's like out the corner of her eye, you see her like, they're looking at Marvin every now and then fumbling with these chopsticks. And it's just like these quirky little touches that I really like, those little details that add a lot to the show. And so basically like the older man has 20 Chinese restaurants and is open to the idea of them doing business. And so with that, we see RAQ better than she did with the Jersey setup, going from restaurant to restaurant, checking out the locations and whatnot, kind of getting the lay of the land. But part of the problem is distribution, right? How are you getting the product moved? And so there's a food supply company, a restaurant supply company with trucks and looks like delivery people and whatnot, where at each one of the locations, she basically sees between the trucks, between the delivery people, moving boxes and barrels of supplies and stuff in and out of the stores, where that would be like expected for such a business, right? And it presents an opportunity for moving drugs in and out of the stores as well. And so with that, we see her go to the company's headquarters, and she attempts to, which I didn't really understand what her plan was going to be. Just like walking in unannounced, no appointment or anything like that, to inquire about what exactly the company supplies, but given that this is like a Chinese restaurant supply company, she walks in as a black woman. They're kind of like the two people in the office kind of look at each other like, who are you and what do you want? You know? And it's kind of like a funny little line where they're like, you know, we supply Chinese restaurants. She's like, well, I don't look like I could have a Chinese restaurant. No, ma'am, no, you don't. You know, and I think you walking in and out of these Chinese restaurants, especially like going in the back, unless like you're eating or something like that, or you're leaving with food, might raise some questions, you know? And so I think obviously she's going to try to somehow get this supply company involved to be able to move product, but it's going to be, I'm curious to see how that goes about, because as of right now, the owner doesn't seem receptive. But granted, it's this thing again of the company being owned by two brothers. The first brother that she meets in this episode, he doesn't really seem interested in talking to her about anything. But I get the sense that should she meet the other brother, he might be more receptive, or somewhere along those lines that one of them is going to be interested and it'll provide a pathway in. You know, kind of pretty smart setup and situation. It's along the lines of a reflection of, if you think of Kanan's business, right? Where the difference though is like, and this kind of goes back to the thing that I said about, you know, Ronnie being more brawn than brains, where he didn't really see the genius of the setup that Unique was putting together, right? Because with using the Couriers, sure, they can move product about very quickly, but they're very out in the open. You know, all it takes is one of them being stopped by the cops and being found with drugs, and questions will be asked, right? You look at it where with them hustling out of these stores, it makes sense for people to be walking in and out. It makes sense for delivery people to be moving boxes and cartons and crates and whatnot in and out. You know, it's a good cover. And when you think of it, the two are similar in concept but different in execution, right? Where with Kanan's, it's a good idea, but it has some flaws, right? Because you're out in the open. The Chinese restaurants kind of, it's a similar setup, you know, in that you have trucks and delivery people moving the product rather than the couriers, with the added benefit that they're moving product in and out of locations that have a lot of foot traffic anyway, right? So it's like, it kind of deals with that problem to a degree of being too out in the open. And again, that speaks to this thing of mature versus rookie hustlers, right? And it speaks to this thing of, despite Ronnie having previous experience in the streets, this thing of him not being a forward-thinking person, you know, of him being tied to the old ways. He recognizes the positives of using Kanan's courier service to deliver the drugs, but fails to see what Unique was trying to point out about the potential risks of being out in the open, especially with the cops and the feds milling about. And so it speaks to like, these setups speak really to each of the characters, right? Kanan and Ronnie, two really immature individuals in the game that are drawn to this one business model. But then you have Unique and RAQ, flawed, right? Not perfect hustlers, but more experienced, you know, them not just looking at the upsides, but also considering the risks and trying to avoid them, you know? And so you see like this difference in not just time spent as hustlers, experience as hustlers, but just also a willingness to try and consider different things. You know, you see like the risk of being too committed to any one way of doing business, as is the case with Ronnie. So it's going to be interesting to see how this develops. Now, on the surface, much as with the setup in Newark, where I'm sure RAQ's new venture is going to make money, as I'm sure, you know, as we've seen Kanan's venture is making money, But as we know with the show, problems will arise.
Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, go ahead and click the thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and go ahead and share it on social media.